Well, I kind of need to give you a little background because my parents, my dad was Nathan Calvin Adams, and my mother was Louise Henderson Adams. And I have to bring in my grandparents, who were Reed and Nida Lee Henderson, because they're the ones that raised me. My dad and mother were divorced right after I was born, and my grandfather brought his daughter back to Panguitch, and I was born in Panguitch. And so I grew up with them, and then the family moved over here when I was 2 to Cedar City. So the interesting part about that is, so I'm an only child. My dad remarried, but never had any kids. But I need to say, I never met my father till I was 25 for the first time. So we had no relationship whatsoever. And my family kind of kept it that way and wanted it that way. But my grandparents were very, very religious. In fact, the day after they got married, they were called on a mission to the Northern States Mission. And my grandmother got pregnant in the mission field and had to come home. And my grandfather stayed and finished the mission that raised me. And then, of course, my mother was there raising me. She worked full time. My grandfather worked full time. My grandmother was a retired school teacher then. So my grandparents lost 4 children. The oldest one only lived to be a year old. So I bring that up because my mother was an only child, basically, and I'm an only child. So, but my grandparents raised her sister's 5 kids when her sister died, and they were all raised with my mother. So that's kind of a unique family situation. And I mentioned that because my grandmother has the Lee tie. I don't know if any of that'll come out, but you'll see where I'm related to a character by the name of John D. Lee. But anyway, they taught me a lot about the gospel. They brought me up in the gospel and always taught me to do what was right and make religion a big part of my life. So I was fortunate to have that. And I grew up on the east side of town, 100 East, just down from the Rock Church. And my grandfather baptized me in the Rock Church when I was 8, so that's kind of special. My grandfather served as my father. He was a game warden, and he took me everywhere in the outdoors. We did a lot of hunting and fishing, as I did growing up with him, and that was my favorite part. He taught me to enjoy doing things with him, basically. I didn't necessarily care about fishing or hunting too much, but I enjoyed being with my grandfather.
You were his buddy and
Yep, and that carried through everything that we did. Well, that's a big one. Like I said, being an only child and marrying a girl that had 7 siblings, it was an experience for me because I didn't grow up with any brothers and sisters. So there was me and that was it. So I pretty much got along without having to fight anybody for anything. And but it really, in having the children, opened my eyes to the importance of the gospel family and the future of a family, the eternal family concept, and the things that I had to do to learn how to be a father to our 4 children, because I didn't really. My grandfather taught me a lot. I learned a lot of things from him on how to treat people and how to love members of the family. And so, I love my kids. They're great. They were great growing up. Yes, we had a few tiffs like, kids do, but I coached them in athletics and a lot of things, so I have a good relationship with them all today. Even though I was kind of hard on them sometimes because I didn't know what I was doing.
Like the rest.
Like, yeah, learn. The biggest thing I guess I need everybody to know is I got a really hard work ethic from my grandfather. My grandfather taught me to work and work hard. And I taught my kids the same. So I started working with a business when I was, I believe, 6, 7, I've forgotten, of selling night crawlers for fish bait. And my grandfather would go out with me every night and we'd gather worms for fish bait. And I was one of the few in town that was selling it at the time. That was my first big business, 25 cents a dozen for worms. And I had repeat customers from Nevada and everywhere that would come back every year to fish on our mountain and buy worms from me. So that was my first start. And then when I was 15, my we came from Panguitch, as I mentioned, so we knew the Ortons, Linford Orton, Lynn's Foods store. So we knew them, and they hired me to sort pop bottles. Most of you don't even know what pop bottles are anymore, right? I would go in after school and sort pop bottles. And I wasn't old enough to be on the payroll, so they just paid me cash and sent me out the back door for sorting pop bottles. So that was a job there. Then when I was 16, our stake president ran a car dealership here in town, Crawford Motor Sales, and he hired me to drive cars, me and my grandfather, shuttle cars. Oh boy, talk about fun, getting my driver's license at age 16 and being able to just get behind the wheel of a car I'd never been in. We'd go to Vegas and pick up cars that were sent there from California. And then they'd bring them back and I would ready them for the lot, sometimes even change the oil and if the mechanic was busy, and I did that for a while. Then when I got to be 16, Lynn's brought me into the store. I spent 10 years in the about of my life at different times in the grocery business before and after my mission. And I worked at Lynn's on, before and after, and I worked at Safeway later on. Safeway is the old Peterson plumbing store. If you remember, any of you that are old enough will remember the old Safeway design. That's it. And I worked there, so I had the grocery experience. And then I got out of that, started college, was going through college. That wasn't going so well. And I'll talk a little bit about one of the forks in my life. That's one of the questions. But I dropped out of college and I'd had about 3 years. That was on the quarter system. So I had 3 years and a quarter. I had 3 quarters left. And I bailed and bought the Radio Shack dealership. I was working part-time there while I was going to school. And I was working, this is why I tell you all these jobs, because I had a million of them. I worked part-time at Radio Shack, part-time selling shoes at J.C. Penney Company, and part-time opening and closing the radio station, KBRE Radio. I had all these part-time jobs while I was going to school, so just whatever worked on what days and what times. Other than the radio station, I had to do every day. But so I had all these jobs up till then, and then the groceries were, got to be a little more steady. But I was always looking for work. That's the way I was taught, and so I did that. Then I did some surveying with Forest Service, learned surveying. I worked with a couple of other engineers in town surveying. And then this plant out west, WECO, Western Electrochemical Company, or American Pacific Corps was their name they changed to, came into Cedar City, and I worked on the survey crew when they built the plant. So we did construction surveying, everything to a T. And then I got hired on there after they opened the plant as a forklift driver and loaded rail cars. When I went to work for WECO, or Western Electrochemical Company, American Pacific Corps, out west, when they rebuilt the plant here in Cedar after it blew up in Henderson, Nevada. And so I was hired as a packer. They called him a packer, but I loaded rail cars, chemical drums on rail cars, and moved them around the plant. And then a few months of that, they said, "Oh, this is boring for you. We want you to learn how to operate the plant." So they shifted me over, trained me how to run all the buildings in the entire plant. And that lasted about 6 months. And they said, "Well, we got another job we want you to take." They wanted me to apply for a job as a lab technician. And I'm like, "Are you nuts? I have no chemistry background other than, one class in college, general ed in chemistry." So when I got my interview, who was an ex-classmate of mine from high school said, "So what do you know about chemistry?" And I said, "I don't know anything other than we blew up volcanoes in chemistry class. That was it. That's all I remember." And he said, "Well, we're going to hire you anyway." So they hired me for that. I spent 14 years as a chemical lab technician. I trained many college graduates in chemistry to do my job. They tell me I have the equivalent of a 4-year degree in chemistry, but after all the hands-on experience. But the company out there made their biggest product was ammonium perchlorate, and made that goes 80% of it's in the space shuttle solid rocket boosters. So the space shuttle was flying big time when I was working there. And so every time the space shuttle went up, $4.5 million of our chemical was burned in 3 minutes and 15 seconds off the pad. So we were certifying chemical about as fast as we could make it back then. But we also made sodium perchlorate for all the missiles that the government shoots around. All these missiles you see is propelled by sodium perchlorate. And we made that product as well. Later on, the plant made sodium azide that inflates your airbags in your cars. That was another byproduct. So anyway, that's a long-term job I got settled into. I did squeeze a little real estate in before that, but mostly that's the job I had. And then I retired from there when I was about 54, and because I could start pulling retirement at 55 from there. So I left that. I'd had tired of doing the same stuff over and over and over again every day. As you can imagine, analysis is on the same stuff. And so then I got back into real estate and worked that for a while and got my broker's license. Then I managed Great Western Realty, which is up here on the hill, for a broker out of California that owned it. And so I did that for, I don't know how many years, quite a while. But my professional life really got going there because I learned a lot in the real estate side of it, got active in leadership. The State Association of Realtors, I'm going to say, coerced me into taking a leadership course that they put together. Very intense, very, very good though. And they taught me to do that, and I had no idea what this was all leading up to, but so they got me into that, and then I served in leadership as the president of the board here in Iron County, several committees on the state level for the Utah Housing Authority and others I chaired. So I got really involved in the state level. And then they said, "We want you to run for political office." I was like, "Politics?" that was not on my bucket list. Okay. So they talked me into it. So I filed and ran for city council with all the support from them. Or I'd never made it, probably, but they were big supporters of that and wanted me to get elected. They like realtors in those positions around the state. So I got that, and I served on the city council for 3 terms, got reelected 2 more times. Spent 12 years on the city council here in Cedar until a couple of years ago when we retired. I had to give it up. My health was getting bad then, and I barely got through my last term without a lot of turmoil. And so I really hated 2 people wanted me to run again. I just told them I couldn't. So my health wasn't good enough to do what I wanted to do. So I gave it up. So that's kind of my whole long professional life. But so I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, maybe. I don't know. Okay, like I said, my faith journey probably started back, as I mentioned, with my parents and my family, my grandparents. I say grandparents, they're parents to me, but they taught me the principles of the gospel, and they lived the principles of the gospel, and they had very strong testimonies, which got me off and running, and desire to serve a mission. And that's probably where the base, solid, real solid foundation occurred, was in the mission field. I had many, many spiritual experiences of teaching people and having the Spirit witness to me while I was teaching them that this was the real McCoy. And so that gave me the ability and the testimony that I always said I could never deny. Regardless of what happens in my life, I could never deny that. I know that's a bold question, but her answer, but that's the truth. That's kept me through the trials and tribulations and all the things that in our world today. I think, as I remember back to what I said back then, but that's really where it was. I had just a lot of experiences with some really special people. So that's.
Where did you serve?
I served in Northern California. Yeah, it was that's an interesting split. When I went out, it was the California North Mission, but I was called to the California Sacramento Mission. They were changing the name. But our mission had elders in Tooele, Utah, all of the state of Nevada except for Las Vegas, then everything from Sacramento north to Oregon at the time. And then, of course, Las Vegas got their mission, took over all Nevada, and Utah got theirs, took Tooele away. I told my mission president, don't send me to Tooele, because I'm going home on weekends if you do. It's too close. So where does he send me? Clear up to Eureka, California, the furthest point of the mission on the coast. So, but I served in some beautiful country up there. But I spent 9 months of my mission in the mission office as the commissarian. I did all the publication and ordered supplies for the mission, did all the offset printing. I had darkroom experience. I never mentioned that with photography. And in high school, I developed slides and prints for the media center. And so they found out that I had darkroom experience. So that landed me in the commissarian job immediately, and I did it for about almost 9 months. My mission, yeah. Okay, this is where I was going to cover a couple, and one of them will, a couple of them will backtrack a little bit, but they were forks. The biggest one, all my life I played sports. Started playing sports when I was 7 years old, competitively, baseball. I pitched a game against Boulder City, Nevada when I was 7 years old, 12 innings of 2-hit baseball. I was a good pitcher. Back then I was big, and I threw hard. So I started as a baseball. Then when basketball became available in city leagues, I got into that, played that competitively. But I never started football till ninth grade. And back then, the high school just had 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Ninth grade was in junior high. So we had a makeshift. They threw all the old equipment that nobody was using down to us, and they tried to teach us some football. And that became my favorite sport, all said and done. But I played all the way through high school. I have 9 letters from Cedar High School in, each year in baseball, basketball, and football. But football was a sport I really enjoyed. I love contact. Um,
I was a coach. I was a recruit, Ron. He had a neck like a telephone.
Yes. Never injured his neck.
Never. I lucked out and didn't get injured, but like I said, I played all these sports and was always playing sports. My grandpa would throw the ball with me, and growing up, and built me a basketball hoop in the backyard out of timber and an old pole. And so I was constantly playing sports, and that's what I loved. But football became my sport. I played both ways, and I kicked off, and I did the punting. So I never sat on the bench. I played the entire game out on everything, but I loved football, and that leads up to my fork. So my basketball year, junior, was very, very good, and I was talking to the University of Utah. They were looking to recruit me as a guard, which I'm a big guy for a guard, but not on the college level. 6'3". I had this height in 8th grade. So anyway, that didn't materialize. Some other things, that was not the story I want to tell you. But football, I was offered a full ride scholarship to Southern Utah University to play football. Then the decision came. Coach said, "You have a decision to make, because I heard through the grapevine you want to go on a mission." I said, "I'm going on a mission." And he says, "Well, yeah, you got to make a choice." I said, "What do you mean I got to make a choice?" And he said, "You got to take the scholarship now, or we don't hold them." Back in those days. Now, today, that's a whole new animal. BYU's proven that. So I said, "Well, I guess I turned down the scholarship then, because I'm going on a mission." So I never did play football on the collegiate level, because when I got back, I was not really interested in going that way. So anyway, that was one fork. The other fork, I got to tell you, is this is my black side, kind of. No, I had a girlfriend in 8th grade, and we went steady up all the way through high school. And it wasn't my current wife. Current wife, I say, but my wife, yeah. But she knew her, and I'll tell you that part of the story. But anyway, so I thought I was in seventh heaven. I thought, okay, I've probably found my mate and everything else. I'm in good shape. Then I get my patriarchal blessing before I go on my mission, and it told me that later on in life you'll be selected with wisdom in the selection of a mate, one of the choice daughters of Zion, with whom you'll take to the temple and be married. And I'm like, okay. Well, that's like putting it bluntly in my face. So things worked out, and we split up right after high school. But I have to tell you our story right here, maybe quickly, and you can edit out whatever you want. But when we were juniors in high school, the church had a dance festival. They used to have dance festivals back then, and they did them on a stake basis, a regional basis, and they had the church-wide dance festival. So the ward stake lady says, we need you to dance. And I'm like, well, okay, my girlfriend lives over in the other, no, Can't do that. It's got to be somebody in your ward. So we were in the same ward. My wife and I were in the same ward. I said, all right, here's the deal. If you let me dance with Michael, I'll do it. But if anybody else, I won't. So she says, all right, you got it. So we were dance partners. We were best friends anyway. And so you can imagine after going to all these dance rehearsals and everything, because we danced in the stake, then we danced in the regional, then we went to Salt Lake and danced as partners, and that's how me and my wife really got connected to each other. But when we graduated from high school and went on to college, she was working at the university, and we talked, and we knew that we were going to get married. She said, you need to go on a mission first. I said, all right, I'm gone. And that's the way we left. So we courted through, because then she got called on a mission a year later to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we were on opposite ends of the country, and we courted through the mail the whole time we were out. Yeah, but then I got home in March, and she wasn't going to get home till the following January. So I had to wait for her. And we had it all lined up. I called her. Back then, you probably weren't supposed to call missionaries. But I called her in January. She was coming home. And I played in a disco band back then with 6 other returned missionaries. And we were doing the snowball at the college. And so I said, hey, there's a dance that night, so you're coming home the day you come home. So I don't know how you feel, but see how it works out. So when I picked her up at the airport, she said, or got to the airport, her parents were there. I went, and they were kind of like, oh, you're here? And I said, yeah. And so she said, well, I think I'm going to go home and, get unpacked and do some things. I said, that's great. So I went home, got, dressed up for the dance and got ready to go. I get a phone call. Hey, Ron, this is Michael. Can I go to the dance with you? She says, oh, my sister's got dates. I don't have anything to do. I said, yeah, I'll pick you up. Said, we can dance, in between songs. So I played the saxophone, so I didn't play all the time, other than little singing backup. So we had some dances. So anyway, that's a long story to get around. But that was a turning point in my life, getting that patriarchal blessing. And, which steered me in the right direction, obviously. Control my temper and more patience. I had a real struggle with that as an athlete. It's really hard to do because the difference between being cocky and too cocky is just a hairline thing. And it was really tough for me at times. I was not bragging, but I was a pretty good athlete. And I figured officials didn't make any good calls if they were against me. So there's a few times that I spent the first quarter on the bench of a basketball game because I had 4 fouls in the first 30 minutes because I'd shot at a referee or something, and I could have learned that principle earlier on in my life. It would have helped, but I got better at it as I got older. So like I said, I have a tendency I have a loud voice when I get wound up, or get stirred up a little, but there's very few people that have heard my mad voice when I'm really ticked off, because you don't want to hear that voice, and I don't want to use it. I try to stay away from it, and I do most of the time. My athletic days are shot, so. But anyway. I want to be remembered as a good father and a good husband to my wife and kids and their family. We have 13 grandkids, and they're a lot of fun. They're a house full. Some days it's hard for me. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of kids around me growing up, so they sometimes, get banging in the house, and I'm like, is the house still intact? Or, but we love them. We still have them over every Sunday for dinner. So, yeah. Just basically be remembered as a good person. I try to be good to everybody I've worked with. Yeah, like I said, I've kind of killed the sports hobbies. I used to play a lot of golf and things, but I can't do that anymore. So basically, I've taken up reloading. My oldest son's a gun freak, and he got me started on reloading and doing that part of it. And we shoot a lot, so he always says, "Don't come to my house because I own a lot of guns." He always, both of us joke about it, but that's been fun, and I still watch sports, and I still love footballs. I've been a Green Bay Packer fan ever since I was old enough to watch TV. It started with Bart Starr, number 15. I wore number 15 my first 2 years in high school, and until they had to give me a bigger number. I said, you can't wear 15 anymore playing tackle. So they gave me 15 because I started out as a quarterback, if you can believe it, but I could throw, but I played line most of the other times. I quarterbacked the JV my sophomore year, and then started as a defensive end on the varsity bowl. So, but anyway, because of my size mainly, and I was big, fairly fast within 10 yards. I could keep up with the running backs in 10 yards, but beyond that, kiss it goodbye. That's why college wanted me to play pulling guard. Well, that's obviously got to be pizza. I've made pizza from scratch since I was old enough to turn on the stove. So I've always loved pizza and used to make it a lot. I haven't done it a lot lately, but that's probably my most favorite food, and top it off with a brownie. It can't be beat. Favorite place is, I love Cedar City. But our next favorite place would be Lake Tahoe, California. I discovered it on my mission. I won't tell you it was out of the mission boundaries, but I found it on my mission because I had a lot of flexibility to go places, being in the office. But anyway, we go to Tahoe every year, and we love it over there. It's just most peaceful. Love the big trees, the pines. I have one right off my balcony that was put there for that reason, ponderosa pines, because I love them. And that's probably my next favorite place other than Cedar City and being home right here. Books are hard. I never was a huge reader, other than the scriptures, so I have to list them, obviously. Two books I'm going to mention as I thought about this. I read two books in English in high school. They're kind of the same area. One was called Black Like Me, and the other one was called Native Son. And they both gave me a whole insight into the black race of people. And I've never been a prejudiced person whatsoever. And that was probably a lot to do with it. That gave me a lot of experience about people that grew up with color and what they had to deal with. So, and I roomed with a black roommate when I was at Boys State in high school. So, and everybody else asked me how I could sleep at night. That's how bad it was. We didn't have any colored people here in Cedar City, and so, but they were all just another person to me. And he went to college out here when I did too, so woke me up in a class one day when I fell asleep.
He was your real buddy.
He was my buddy. Yeah.
You were working nights.
Yeah. Yeah, Doctrine and Covenants, 90:24. Search diligently, pray always, and be believing, and all things shall work together for your good if you walk uprightly and remember the covenants wherein you've covenanted one with another. That's always been my favorite scripture. Hymns, definitely, I need the every hour. Always has been, always will be.
It's my grandfather's favorite.
Well, I have to go back to 7th grade. That's when we met. That's when my family moved from next to the North Elementary to next to the East Elementary. So we ended up in the same ward in the Rock Church. So we've known each other since 7th grade. Like he said, we were just friends. And you know, guys and gals can be friends, right? But when I returned from my mission, I was nearly 23 years old. And there was not a guy left in this whole town who was not already married. So I had to find me the one who was the most righteous, the most religious, and that could take me to the temple, and that was Ron. So we ended up together. That was 45 years ago. And here we are today. Ooh, there's lots of stuff you should know. He'd kill me if I told you, but let's see. What else should you know about Ron? He's very humble about his sports because he was the BMOC, which is big man on campus, yes, because of the 3 sports he was in. And he was the ultimate of tall, dark, and handsome, 6'3", brown hair with the blue eyes, you know, so he did wear glasses, and I always told him he looked better without them. But I don't know if there was a single gal in my entire class that didn't want to date him. So and we were just friends in high school. And when I went on my mission, well, he left first, didn't you?
Yeah.
He left when we were about 20. And he said, you're in the ward and, you know, you're in the class and we know each other. And so write to me once in a while and tell me what's going on. So I wasn't very good at that. Maybe once a month I would write to him and tell him what was going on. Until I went on a mission. And then you know how important letters from home are. So then we started writing once a week. So like he said, we courted through the mail for about 3 years and knew probably the day I came home that we were going to get married. So I got home at the end of January. I had pneumonia at the time, but we went to the dance anyway. He asked me to marry him on Valentine's, and we got married in June. So
Can big athletes really dance?
not really. I won't go there, but no. What else do you need to know about Ron? He's a teddy bear at heart, but just don't get him riled up because once in a blue moon that temper will show through. So
Teddy bear turns into
a grizzly. Yeah, yeah. I think our kids can testify because he hadn't quite overcome the temper when our kids were little and getting into stuff and breaking things and, you know, so.